Welcome, my dear ones. This is Tracy Anderson Askew, your host for the Transform Your Birth podcast, changing your mind about birth one story at a time. Each week, we'll be exploring a birth story through the lens of what birth can teach us. I'll be digging deep into each story so you can learn what it is that can change the way a birth unfolds. We can't control birth, but we can influence it. So listen in to find out how. Enjoy. Emma had enormous fear around giving birth and knew the answer to this for her was to get informed and prepared. She read many books and completed the Transform Your Birth course. This gave her and her partner a clear path forward. She shares how she was able to identify what information to take on and what not to listen to. She goes on to have a vaginal birth and shares the tools that helped her most. Enjoy. Welcome again, everybody. Another week of the Transform Your Birth podcast. And today we have the lovely Emma M. We're going to call her Emma M today. And Emma, you had a little baby. How long ago?
So we had Hamish. He's about 4 months now.
4 months. A little boy, Hamish, 4 months ago. Now, tell us, Em, how were you feeling when you were pregnant about the idea of giving birth, and what sort of preparation did you do?
So early on I was pretty nervous. I was nervous before I even got pregnant. I wasn't sure I wanted to get pregnant just because of, I was worried about a lot of things that could happen, and just, like lifelong consequences of things that could happen. So I was pretty scared. So I was really looking to inform myself a lot because I'm just that sort of person. I think more comfortable when I have all of the information or I've done some preparation. So I'd heard really good things about the Transform Your Birth the course. From a couple of people. Like, I think at first I was like, oh, do I really need to do this? And then I think I asked a couple of people and they were very different types of people. So I was like, oh, well, if they're all saying it's good, then, it must be worthwhile. So
we do get all sorts of people in our courses, and that's what I love about it. It appeals to everyone, actually, because it's pretty solid and, it's not too flaky. So,
Yeah, and I had heard good things as well, sort of like unprompted from other people. And I'd heard a lot of people had done it for like their second child. And so I was like, well, I just want to get him for my first then if they felt like they, needed that extra support even for their second one. So I did that, and I also asked my midwife for some like reading material and things like that. She recommended quite a few books that I read, and I made my husband read them. So we were both sort of prepared. And then I think when we went along to the course, it kind of consolidated a lot of the other stuff that we had read and like reaffirmed it. And I think the repeating of it did make it good. So reading it and then going along to the course and feeling like we knew what we were doing a bit more.
You're on the right track. What changes did you notice from, because you sort of said, you were pretty nervous about birth to the point where you weren't even sure you wanted a child. And what were the teachings that really helped to switch your thinking about birth?
Yeah, I think going along to the course and also in some of the material that I'd read from my midwife as well, I think the physiological aspect to it, like how connected the psychological was to the physiological, made me more confident. So I just thought, like, this is natural. Like, there's going to be hormones that are released that are going to make it easier, that are going to make things work just the way that they should work. And so I think also just understanding that I needed to not panic. So I think like that was reinforced in your course and in a lot of the things that I had read was, I don't want, to introduce adrenaline. I don't want to be panicked. Like, I need to kind of just try and remain calm, and then things will just go a bit easier. And I thought that the whole way along through my labor as well. I was like, okay, don't panic, like just try and remain calm. And I think that that's probably what helped me and what made me more confident going into it as well.
Yeah, that's a really interesting comment, because I think when you are aware of being scared of birth, the idea of panicking seems like it could happen very, very easily, because birth is quite an intense thing. But when you learn about the physiology and you learn what adrenaline does, how it impacts the other feel-good hormones, and to panic would make it harder and more painful, then your subconscious kind of goes, okay, we've got to take that one off the table, and it's no longer an option. And so in doing the course and learning about the physiology and how these hormones work and how they're there to support us, not just to get through birth, but to actually feel really good about it and to be ready to parent, then the idea of freaking out no longer becomes an operating principle of your subconscious. It's like, no, we don't do freak out in birth because that's going to make it worse. So that knowledge is powerful. And then you're anchoring yourself to your capacity to stay calm. So to do that, you need to do the practices. How did you go with the practices?
Yeah, I think, so I did meditation leading up to it. I think what really worked for me, though, was breathing exercises, especially during labor. I think I had practiced those and I had just become really good at it. And I think during labor, I was able just to maintain the breathing the entire time, even when I was doing other things. And I think that really helped. And then also just keeping the environment really calm. So my husband and I worked really well, I think, as a team, because we both were like, we have to try and make the environment as calm as possible. And so he was really good at doing that at home and in the labor suite and everything like that. So I think those are some of the things I found most useful, and movement as well. That was really good. And I also did prepare a birth poster, but my husband left it in the car. But because I think I had made it, and it had sort of like positive affirmations on it. I had pictures of things like places I wanted to go, like in nature that I really liked, and stairs and things like that. So I knew everything that was in that poster. So I was able to kind of think about it. And I think in the moment I didn't realize that he hadn't brought it, but I think I had internalized it at least, because I'd spent a lot of time making it.
Yeah, beautiful. So I'm really curious about that. When you went into labor, what are the sort of things you did with your mind?
I think it was just that don't panic mantra that I had. Really did help, because there were a couple of points where I was like, oh, I just don't know, like, if I have got this. But yeah, I think I was just in my head, I was just like, remain calm, like baby knows the way, like, I think that's kind of where my head was at. But there were definitely like a few points where I thought I was going to panic. Like, I think initially he was posterior, so I had like back labor. And I think in my head as well, I just thought, oh, this is my first baby, like I have to be prepared to go for like 24 hours, 48 hours. I don't know how long this is going to take. So I think I was prepared that it was going to be a long time, just in case. But then because of that, I think it sort of like ramped up pretty quickly, and I was like, oh, could I do this for 48 hours? I don't know. But I think in the end I was like, oh, I just have to remain calm. And then it was nowhere near that long. So I think that's probably what helped.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. And of course, time is one of those things you don't want to get hooked into with labor. When women get hooked into the, how much longer do I have to keep going? Is this going to be 24, 48 hours? And they have these concepts of time. It pulls them out of the zone. And the zone is about being in this moment, this contraction, right here, right now.
Yeah.
So that sounds really interesting. And it was good that you were able to tap into the things that you'd done in your birth picture and use your mind to harness it and focus on the things that you wanted, with the words and the affirmations that you use is a great way to hook the mind into what we want rather than what we don't want. Can you deconstruct a little bit about what the breathing was for you, how you used it? It sounded like it was quite a powerful tool for you.
So I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, you may not have a recollection of it, Em, and if you don't, that's fine. But it just wants people to know, how do women use the breathing in labour? What can you
So I think I was just really deeply breathing. I wasn't necessarily counting, but I was just focusing on getting a lot of oxygen in, and then I was just I wanted a calm face when I was breathing out. So it would just be like an ah sound or like an ooh sound, but it wasn't like a, I didn't want to like scream or anything like that. I was definitely trying to like keep my face muscles relaxed. And so, yeah, I guess like, yeah, it was just a sound to, yeah, like an ah sound or an ooh sound to keep my facial muscles relaxed, I think is what I was using from memory.
Sounds can be a really wonderful way of helping women to deal with the intensity, and they often do make quite sort of primal sounds. So it sounded like you got into a really lovely rhythm with your breathing and keeping it really slow. That's what we want to do with breathing in labour. Not so much deep as much as just gentle. Let it be automatic, but let it be really, really slow. So sound like that's what you did.
Yeah.
So tell us more about your labour and how you went into labour and what unfolded on the day.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So on my due date, I actually did have contractions, and I think I'd gone for like a 6-kilometer walk the night before.
Oh, that'll do it.
I was like, maybe this will kick things off. Anyway, so it did kick something off, and luckily I had a midwife appointment that day because that was my due date. And I went in and I was like, I actually think I'm having contractions. And she was, I think in her head, she was like, okay, like not many babies come on the due date, I don't think. And I was like, I know, but and so she was like, well, just try to go home and get some rest. Cause like it was totally manageable at that point. I just thought, oh, this might be something. But as the day went on, they sort of petered off, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe that was just a false start. And I thought by Friday was going to be the book fair, and I thought, oh, I'll make the book fair. And so I planned to go with a friend, and this was 2 days after the due date. But then that morning, sort of 2 a.m., I think I woke up and I was definitely having contractions. I was like, okay, I think this is definitely it. Like they started to get stronger. I sort of lay there for a bit. I didn't sort of tell my husband until probably like an hour later, and I was like, oh yeah, I think this is probably gonna keep going. And so that was when I was having the back labor. And so it was, I actually had thought, oh, I'll go into labor and I'll be stamping around and, like that will help things. But it was actually more uncomfortable doing that because of the back labor.
Yeah.
So I was using like a spiky ball to kind of distract myself a bit. And I was doing the breathing and just swaying and that sort of thing. And then by about, I think, 6 or 7 a.m., my husband thought, okay, well, I'm going to call a midwife now. So he called her and she was like listening to me, and she was like, okay, let's meet at the hospital at 7:30. So we went there at 7:30, and I did have a check when I got in there because I was like, I just want to know how far along I was. And I think in my head I knew it was probably too early. So, but I think I just wanted like to know anyway. So she checked and she was like, oh, maybe 2 centimeters, like maybe 3. How about you go home for a couple of hours and just see how you go for maybe 4 hours or so. So I think because she told me 4 hours, like I knew, like I had that time in my head a little bit. Yeah. So I got home and and she was like, maybe just try and turn him if you can. So we're doing some positions to try and turn the baby a little bit. So just like on the fit ball, lying forwards and things like that. And I really wanted to get in the shower, but we don't have continuous hot water. So I was like, if I get in the shower and it runs out, I'm going to be really mad. So I kind of was like, I've got to find something else to do until I get back to the hospital. I can use all their hot water. So yeah, it was just mainly on the fit ball. And then, yeah, the time just flew by. Like, I think I got to a point, I didn't know what time it was, but I got to this point where I was like, I think I have to go in. And I got in the car, and I know at that point, then I realized what the time was. So it had been about 4 hours. And in my head, I didn't say anything to my husband, but in my head, I was like, I don't know if I could do this all day. I think when I get to the hospital, I'm going to ask for an epidural or something. I don't know. Mm. And then when I turned up, she checked me again, and I was 6 centimeters. So I was like, I think like something went off in my head, and I was like, oh, like I could do this for another hour, and that might be all it takes. Like,
And that's quite true too. You can dilate very quickly the last few centimeters, particularly if you're relaxed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I was like, oh, that's quite like that's that was a lot. And yeah, from what I had read, like it could happen in as short a time as an hour. So I was like, oh, maybe I could do that. Like, that's fine. So I didn't, like, the thought didn't enter my mind of getting an epidural then at that point again. Like, it just, I was like, oh, okay, I've got this. Because I think my midwife was like, just get in the shower. Like, she knew I wanted to be in the water. So I just popped in the shower, and then I was in there for ages, but I didn't realize. So it was, yeah, like that concept of time had just gone out the window at that point, I think. And the shower worked really well for me. So I had it really. Do you want to keep going? Sorry, I just feel like I'm
that's
rambling.
great.
So I'm in the shower, and I like to have a really screaming hot shower. So there's just like steam everywhere, and I'd probably been in there, like, I only know now that I was probably in there for like an hour, hour and a half. And then at some point, my midwife comes in and she's like, oh, the fire alarm in the building's going off. You know, just so you know. But you know, don't panic or anything, like, you know, just letting you know. And then she was like, it's probably just like a test or like a false alarm, but we're not going anywhere, don't worry about it. I was like, okay, no worries. And so we're in there for a little bit, and then she comes back in and she's like, it seems like the alarm's actually coming from this room. So
really?
like, we might have to move rooms. And in my head, I was like, I'm not moving rooms. Like, I'm just not moving.
Deal with it. It's not happening.
And then she came back in a little bit later. Like, I don't know if I remember this, or it's just that my husband's told me that this is what happened. But I think she came in and she was like, oh, the firemen are here and they just want to come in the room and make sure that nothing's on fire. Basically. And you know, we don't have any, and she's like, I told them we don't have any incense or candles, but you know, they want to have a look. And she's like, but I'm going to close the door, they're not going to come in the bathroom. I was like, no worries, okay. So they must have gone in the room and had a look and realized it was the steam or something like that had set the alarm off, and it was all fine. But yeah, it just like basically didn't register in my mind that most of this like chaos was going on. And then at that point, I just felt like, I was like, I feel like I need to go to the toilet or something like that. And at that point, my midwife was like, okay, get in the pool, because that's where I wanted to give birth.
Yeah.
So I got in the pool at that point, and I don't know how long I was in there. But yeah, I just remember I was just in the pool. I was still doing my breathing. It was really calming and relaxing in there. And I think at some point, like, because I just obviously, like, I had not pushed the baby out before, so I was like, I don't quite know what I'm doing. Like, I've read what to do. I've been told what happens, but I obviously, like, it's completely different when you're experiencing it. And so I just remember my husband being like, telling me this technique from the Juju Sundin book that I'd read. And he was like, just remember the coffee plunger. And I was like, I hate the coffee plunger. I hate that technique. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. I'm trying to do this coffee plunger thing with my diaphragm and everything. But it just didn't, like, it didn't feel like it was working for me. And I must have been in there a long, long time. I don't know. But my midwife was like, hey, like, how about you hop out and you hop on the toilet and just like, you know, push a little bit there, just see if you can get a feel for things there. Like, it'll be a different position sort of thing. So I was like, okay, no worries. So I got out, I was on there for a little bit, and then she was like, okay, maybe do you want to try the bed, or, you know, so then I was like, okay, no worries, I'll go to the bed. Each time I'm walking around, though, I think the gravity was kicking in, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it to the bed. I don't think I'm going to make it. And I did, but it was a bit scary. But yeah, so I got to bed, and then I just knew I didn't want to be like on my back or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I was on my side and pushing. And I think at one point, my midwife said, okay, well, you've been sort of actively pushing for over an hour, which it just felt like 2 seconds, I reckon. Yeah. Like, it didn't feel like an hour at all. Like, I had heard that some people could push for that long, and I was like, how do you do that? But like, yeah, it just did not feel like anything. And she was like, you know, the hospital policy is that after an hour, you have to do continuous monitoring. And she was like, but it's up to you, like, it's your choice. And I was like, nah, I think it's close. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I think I just want to keep going. But I think because she said that, I might have just been a little bit in my head, like, feeling like, oh, maybe I'm on the clock now sort of thing, even though, like, she definitely wasn't trying to make me feel like that at all or anything like that. But I think I got in my head a little bit, and I thought, oh, maybe I need to speed things up a little bit here. So I started pushing, And it didn't take very long at all before he was crowning. And it was really only like a couple of pushes after that, and he sort of flew out, and my husband caught him. That was like the most exciting thing, and put him on my chest. And so like that bit happened just super quick, I think. And I think because of that, I think I probably did like rush it. Like if I had my time again, I probably wouldn't have rushed it a little, like as much as I feel like I did. But I mean, hindsight, like in the moment, you sort of just going with it. But it was great. So yeah.
What did it feel like to meet your little boy?
Oh, he was just I don't know, like it was just so exciting. And I think it felt like such a relief, but it was so exciting. And there's like all these emotions, I think. And I think part of the reason I really wanted to try and give birth without like an epidural or without gas or anything like that is because I wanted to experience that like natural high that people say you get. I was like, I just want a chance to experience that. Like if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I just want to try and see what that's like because it sounds really cool. And yeah, it was amazing. Like I felt amazing. So it was just this tiny slimy little thing. But yeah, just gorgeous. So wow,
that's amazing. So as you look back at that, Emma, what were the tools and the things that supported you the most through that labor?
I think the amount of preparation I'd done. I think I knew I didn't have like a strict birth plan or anything like that. Like my midwife and I had discussed preferences. I really wanted to try and avoid like forceps or vacuum or episiotomy. Like I was still probably a bit worried about those things. So I was like, look, if so I'd done a lot of education around those tools and when I would be happy to use them, when I wouldn't be happy to use them. And I think so just like having those sort of preferences that I'd communicated to my midwife, I felt like she and my husband and I really like worked together to try and like get the birth that I wanted.
Yeah.
And I think because of the preparation, I was sort of like aware of the things that could happen, and I was like, I knew that I was going to make choices that I was going to be comfortable with. Yeah. So, if it had gone too long and they'd become worried, and if I needed to have a cesarean, then I was going to be comfortable with that. Like, I think because I knew about what could happen and when I was going to consent to certain things, like, I think I just felt more prepared and confident. And I think I needed to feel confident going in into it. And I think that's probably what really helped.
So it sounds like you were really well prepared in your own mind as to how you wanted to approach it, the tools that you needed, and the choices and your ability to communicate those choices to your carer.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a huge difference. And you had the blessing of having your own midwife, is that right?
Yeah.
The continuity program, which we had a podcast episode with Ali Tate, who studied this phenomenon and what the interactions and the relationships that women build with their midwives when there's continuity is very, very different than if they're just being checked by a different person each time. So you really you created beautiful conditions for your birth to unfold in a pretty straightforward manner. And fortunately for you and Bubby, there was no complexity to the way that he was coming out, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
As you look back at it now, what did you learn about yourself, Emma?
I think I just immediately afterwards, and even now, I just feel like a superhuman, even though it's a completely natural thing to do. But I was just like, yep, I did that. It was amazing. I just really like proud of myself that I did it, especially when I was like so scared initially, I think. yeah, I think I just feel like, yeah, I can overcome challenges, and I can, yeah, I can give birth and it's fine. Like, it's great.
Did that, what you learned about yourself, did that really help translate into your parenting then? Your confidence after giving birth?
I think so. I think, yeah, like, I think in the days afterwards, I think I just, because I felt like I had a really positive birth, I think I wasn't sort of dwelling on things that had happened. Like, I have sort of since met quite a few people through mother scripts and things like that who had probably quite traumatic births, and they're obviously still thinking about that like weeks and months later.
Yeah,
and it can be stressful, I think, when they're thinking, oh, am I going to have another child, like planning to have another child and thinking, oh, but this is what happened last time and how do I avoid that, and that sort of thing. Like, I don't have a lot of those fears because I have a very positive experience about my birth. So I think that definitely did help, because there's lots of stressful things early on. The breathing as well, I think, was a really good tool, especially early on. Like, you're sort of sleep deprived, and you are your confidence can be challenged a little bit. Like, you think you know what you're doing, like you've read all the books and you're like, I don't, but like, is my child sick? I don't know. Like, I probably tested my child's temperature like every day. Like, maybe he has a cold. I don't know. So like, you get worried, and then I think over time I'm like, no, I think I've got this. Like, you start to get your confidence again. And I think, yeah, the breathing, I definitely did that a lot in the early days, like, in the witching hours when he was crying and everything feels a bit raw. Yeah.
And a bit hard. What would you say to a pregnant woman?
I think I would tell her, and I have told people that, like, I just had the best time. Like, honestly, I had the best time, but I think I would also emphasize that I think it was because I had done lots of preparation beforehand. And I would tell them not to listen to people who have negative stories. Not necessarily not listen, but just know that it doesn't always have to be like that. It's not a scary thing or anything like that. Because I think it's that mental aspect, especially for me, that was so important. So I just think, yeah, if I was imparting any wisdom on anyone who's pregnant, it would just be like, just try and remain calm and think about things that are going to help you and make you relaxed, because that's just going to make things easier no matter what happens, I think.
Yeah, that's the goal, isn't it? To be calm and relaxed under all circumstances. Yeah. That's very, very wise. In my previous podcast, the one before this one, we were talking about the information overload that pregnant women can sort of find themselves in, because you get information from all sources, from the hospital classes to people's stories to Google to my classes or any similar type classes. How do you think mothers need to create potential filters or even boundaries around what they take on and what they don't?
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably want to decide at the outset what sort of where you want to get your information from. And for me, I really wanted to go to reputable sources. So, the books I read were by experts, people who are actually trained in the field, like attending your course as well. And I think I did get to a point where I was like, look, I don't want to hear colloquial stories about, how your birth went, because my birth's probably going to be different. And especially if it's an unhelpful story. So I think you just need to be confident to tell people if you don't want to hear about their story.
Yeah.
If that's what you decide is not going to be helpful to you. And really only get information from those places that you think are going to be useful to you. And I think at a point you probably do get a bit information overload. Like, I think it's helpful because I was getting a lot of the same messaging reinforced. Like, there were a lot of the same messaging from some of the hospital classes just about the physiological aspects of it, to your course, to some of the books that I'd read. So that was actually good for me at reinforcing those, remain calm and kind of, let things happen how you want them to happen messages. But I think I did get to a point where I was like, okay, I feel like I know. And I think at that point you should just stop looking for more information and just try to relax into it. Like, I think you need to recognize when you're sort of at your peak information stage.
I've been teaching my course for probably close to 17, 18 years, and it's evolved over time. It started out as calm birth and wonderful beginnings because it helped me to understand the role of the mind. But as I've evolved it over the years, I've really done my best to distill the information so that it's so clear, so undeniable, particularly on a subconscious level, and gives people a great sense of, okay, we've got this. Both the birthing mum and her birthing partner, with really, really clear roles, and not to overcook them with too much.
Yeah.
And then as part of that, we then continue to support them with our catch-up groups and, regular Zoom sessions where they can just tune in to different topics and keep their learning going, but things that are going to be relevant to them at this particular point in the process. So I think what you're saying is right. It's not taking on too much information, particularly people's stories. There's a point which you get a bit saturated, and that's certainly been the basis through which we've created the Transform Parenting pathway for our families. So thank you for sharing such a beautiful, inspiring story. It's a lovely, straightforward story, going from being so scared to give birth that you're not even sure you're going to get pregnant, to then overcoming that fear through your desire to know and understand. Knowledge is power. The right knowledge is power, because it helps you to understand the process and gives you a sense of agency and what you can do to contribute. Remember, we can't control birth, but we can influence it. And when you're really clear on what are the things that you can do to support the birth process and train for that, doing the practices, breathing, as well as going into deeper and deeper states of relaxation so that you can down-regulate your stress response, then you're not just thinking differently, you're labouring different, and birth becomes more manageable. And then, of course, as Emma points out so beautifully, it then sets you up beautifully for that lovely big high when you're ready to be a parent and overcome the next round of challenges with getting to know your baby. So this is what birth is here to teach us and to prepare us for. And when we bring that level of respect and honour to the process and see the benefit of the process, then we can surrender more to it. So thanks again for listening, everybody. And thank you, Emma, for sharing your beautiful story.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you again next week, everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and share this podcast. Transform Parenting is a childbirth and parenting education organisation that supports families through pregnancy all the way through the first 7 years of parenting. Why not watch our free webinar on Keeping Relaxed and Excited About Birth, where we discuss the 3 most important things that will change a birth. You'll find us at our website on www.transformparenting.com.au. Thanks for listening.